We once screamed each other's names just to survive. Now, I'm the only one who remembers how to say his. Tom Reynolds, 2025. Tom Reynolds, 76, sat alone in a cold wooden cabin. Next to the old fireplace sat a black and white photo of a platoon in 1969. In his hand was Jack's notebook, his fallen friend's journal. Tom turned to the last page, where a shaky line of handwriting remained. "Tell Tom I waited." He read it slowly, then closed the notebook. His eyes were empty. On the table lay a thick stack of documents, scene photos from where the remains were found, a 1969 field map, a forensics report, all carefully organized, like he was preparing to send them somewhere. Tom writes to the MIA office. Under the warm yellow glow of a desk lamp, Tom typed, "My name is Thomas Reynolds. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, Vietnam War. I have just discovered the remains of my teammate, Jack Miller, who went missing in Quang Tri in 1969. Attached are site photos and pages from Jack's journal confirming he survived for at least 7 days after being left behind. He sent copies to the Department of Defense, the Veterans Committee, several independent journalists who had covered MIA cases. Then he waited. Every day he checked the mailbox. All he got were automated replies. One letter from the Pentagon read simply, "Case closed in 1970. No further inquiry recommended." That night, Tom sat alone in the dark, looking out a snow-covered window. His eyes stared into the forest, but his mind wandered to the past. Flashback, Jack bandaging Tom's leg under a jungle canopy. He grinned. "If I die here, promise me one thing. Don't let them forget me." "Knock it off, Jack. Don't talk like that. Promise me." Back to present. Tom mumbled into a glass of bourbon. "I did promise, but no one wants to hear it now." Around 3 a.m., a knock on the door. Tom grabbed his rifle and opened it. No one. Just a manila envelope on the frozen doorstep. Inside, Jack's notebook, the very one Tom had mailed days ago, returned. No message, just a slip of paper. "Be careful what ghosts you wake." Tom's hand clenched. His eyes burned. He whispered, "If I stay silent, he'll die all over again." Tom reopened the 1969 field map. He circled a dense patch of forest where Jack had been left behind. Then he wrote the first line in a fresh notebook. Day 1, the journey for truth and for guilt. He stood up, pulled on his coat, grabbed his old Marine Corps cap, and stepped out into the howling wind. A soldier can die from bullets, but when he's left behind by a signature made in a chilled office 8,000 miles from the war, that's not combat, that's a cover-up. Tom used to believe his friend died in duty. Now he knew Jack died because of a pen at the Pentagon. With the government rejecting every shred of evidence, Tom took it further. He searched for someone who once had access to classified war files. A name rose from memory. Edward Banks, former intelligence analyst stationed in Southeast Asia, 1968 to 1973. Tom drove across 4 states, arriving in a dusty little town in Arizona. He knocked on the door of a small, weather-worn house where Banks had lived in solitude for over 20 years. A thin, balding man opened the door, voice raspy and wary. But when Tom mentioned Jack Miller's name, something in the man's expression shifted. Banks unlocked an old safe and pulled out a faded photocopy. Classified, Red Echo, Vietnam 1970. Tom's heart sank as he read. Jack Miller. Notes, live signals recorded. Probable survival. A red underline beneath the words, mission canceled. Strategic priority, maintain theater integrity. Jack had been alive. A rescue mission had been proposed, but it was scrapped, not due to weather, not due to danger, but for strategic priorities. Tom didn't speak, didn't ask. He just stared at the page like a piece of his past had been carved out with a cold blade. Banks said quietly, Red Echo was one of the reports tagged for short-term access only. Any copy that still exists isn't supposed to. Tom folded the page, tucked it into his coat. His hands trembled, but his face stayed calm. Tom and Banks headed to the military archives in Kansas. After presenting the report code and ID documents, the archivist frowned. That file number doesn't exist in the system. Either it was never logged, or it's been scrubbed internally. A thicker wall of silence than any Tom had seen in war. They sought one final witness, Marla Keener, a former file clerk who had once handled classified archives. She now lived on a small farm, teaching painting to kids and growing vegetables. After a long pause, Marla stepped inside. and returned with a weathered bundle of paper clipped together with a broken pen. I wasn't supposed to keep this, but I read it, and it didn't deserve to be burned. The file, though wrinkled and faint, confirmed everything. Jack was reported alive for at least 72 hours post-engagement. The rescue op was pulled at the last minute. In red ink, handwritten with no signature, "Don't escalate, use KIAP tag, quicker to file." Tom said nothing. He closed the report and set it down, looking at it as if staring into his own buried past. That night, in a rundown motel, Tom lit a candle and sat before an old wooden desk. In his hand, Jack's journal, the final entry no longer just a young soldier's dying words, but an indictment of an entire system. Day 7. Still no sound. I held on too long. I thought someone would come. Tom opened his own notebook, writing a single bold line. He didn't die in combat. He died because someone needed him to disappear. A medal can't replace an apology. A folded flag can't replace the truth. Some soldiers don't die from bullets. They die because someone erased their name. Tom hadn't come to accuse. He came to speak the name an entire country once forgot. After gathering enough evidence about Jack, from dog tags, the journal, the scene photos, to a copy of the Red Echo report, Tom reached out to a small local TV station in Montana. The reporter was a young woman, not yet 30, someone who'd never lived through war, but she listened to Tom with eyes fixed on every wrinkle in his face. The interview aired 3 days later. In it, Tom did not shed tears, did not call for justice, did not blame anyone. He just told the story. The one line that left the whole program silent: Jack didn't die in war. Jack died when we stopped calling his name. 2 days later, the interview video spread across veterans groups on Facebook, YouTube, and old military forums. One veteran wrote, "I used to think he got rescued. Now I know no one ever came." An 83-year-old mother left a comment, "I had a son who was declared KIA too, but my heart never believed it. Thank you for not forgetting." Small newspapers began to pick up the story. An independent military historian even asked Tom to share the entire file to cross-reference with other MIA cases. After multiple petitions from the community, a special hearing was opened in Montana about re-examining MIA records with potential inaccuracies. Tom was invited to testify before the committee. The room only had a few dozen people, but when Tom stepped up to the stand, no one spoke. In his hands was Jack's journal, now rebound in fresh leather. Mud from the Vietnamese jungle still stained its pages. He turned to the last page. His voice was raspy but steady, without a tremor. He said, "Tell Tom I waited." No one moved. The entire committee fell silent. Tom continued without tears, looking straight ahead. "He didn't die from blood loss. He died because he was left behind. And if I stay silent today, then I'm part of leaving him behind too." 1 month after the hearing, the federal government agreed to amend the records. Jack Miller, from presumed KIA, identified, recovered. Jack's gravestone at Arlington was re-engraved. A small ceremony was held with representatives from the government, the MIA organization, and the veterans who had fought alongside Jack. Tom didn't speak at the memorial. He simply placed Jack's journal beside the headstone, bowed his head, and stood silently for almost a minute. In the cold afternoon sunlight, no one said a word, but something, long buried, had been lifted, from the heart of one man and from the story of one young soldier. War doesn't end when the gunfire stops. For many, it only begins when no one comes home. Tom had just finished a 50-year promise to his friend, but just when he thought he could finally rest, another plea came to find him. After Jack's memorial, Tom returned to Montana. The small cabin in the woods seemed quieter than before, but his heart was not. For several nights he sat by the fireplace, staring at a map of Vietnam pinned to the wall, with a note taped underneath. One man came home. How many are still waiting? One early spring afternoon, with the last snow melting, an old pickup truck pulled up outside. A middle-aged man stepped out, weathered and worn, carrying a battered brown leather briefcase. He introduced himself as David Collins from Missouri. David didn't circle around the point. His voice was rough, slow, but his hands clutched the briefcase strap like he was holding something painfully fragile. He opened it and handed Tom a stack of files and an old photograph. 2 brothers, one in an American uniform. Sergeant Michael Collins, missing since 1969, near the Laos border, listed as presumed KIA, body never recovered. Then David pulled out a crumpled letter, still showing faded ink. If you can, before your mother closes her eyes, bring your brother home. David didn't say much more, but his eyes were filled with decades of waiting, the same look Tom once had. Tom sat quietly after David left. The room felt as if the war had never ended. He held the photo of the Collins brothers, studied it for a long time, then placed it next to the picture of his own platoon. No one needed to say it out loud, but Tom understood. This was no longer just about Jack. He took out a fresh notebook, turned to the first blank page, and wrote, Day 1, another promise. That night, while going through David's documents, Tom noticed a detail. A 1970 recon photo showing 3 American soldiers standing beside a rough wooden stake. On the stake, white paint letters now smeared but still visible. Ghost line, March 1970. Tucked behind the photo was a scrap of paper, unsigned. Your brother wasn't the only one. Some were never put on any report. Some were never allowed to come back. Tom switched on the desk lamp. The room lit up. His eyes had changed. No longer the eyes of a survivor, but of a man on a mission. He ran his finger across a dense patch of jungle near Laos on the Vietnam map, marked it, folded it up, pulled out the old backpack from under the bed. Final scene. Tom stands on the porch of the cabin, the wind whipping around him. In his hand was Jack's dog tag from that final day. He slipped it into his chest pocket. No one called him to go, but he had heard something that others had long forgotten.